All right, Alexander, we need to discuss the big news of the day, which comes out of Israel. The end of Netanyahu's 12-year run as Israel's longest-serving prime minister. This is huge news, and it's interesting news because we have, for the first time, an Arab party, which is part of this ruling coalition. Smaller party, but still, they've signed on to this coalition, and it looks like it is the end of Netanyahu's tenure as Prime Minister. What do you make of this news?
Well, I think this is extraordinary and enormous news. And can I just say, to me personally, unexpected. I did a program on my own channel a little while ago in which I said that after all the fighting that had taken place just, a week or so ago in Israel and on the West Bank and in Gaza, I thought that it would be a surprise to me if Netanyahu were to fall. I thought that it would essentially persuade the Israelis to stick with, the experienced pilot who's navigated the ship of state and not to drop him at a time like this. Well, they have actually dropped him, and that's a surprise to me, but it also shows how strong the groundswell of feeling within Israel on the part of many Israelis is against Netanyahu. And of course, the big breakthrough is the decision to include this Arab party, because that has been the important missing link in creating this coalition. Up to now, the various Israeli parties that have been opposed to Netanyahu have been unable to form a government, even though there is within the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, an anti-Netanyahu majority, because up to this moment in time, they've been unwilling to bring the Arab parties into the government, into the coalition. And now they have made that decision. So that taboo against including an Arab party in a governing coalition in Israel has now been broken, and that is momentous. So it is as momentous as the fact that Netanyahu himself is going. And I think on this occasion, he probably is going. I think this is, at least for the time being, the end of Netanyahu as Prime Minister of Israel. You said that he's been Prime Minister for 12 years. Of course, he's been Prime Minister on other occasions. Before he started to be Prime Minister 12 years ago, he is the single individual who has dominated Israeli politics over the last decades, and he has been Prime Minister of Israel longer than anyone else, longer than David Ben-Gurion, who was the founder of the state, and longer than Golda Meir. So this is somebody who has been this extraordinary political survivor. His time has now come, it seems. Personally, I think losing power in this way, with all this swirl of allegations, corruption allegations that have been made against him, makes it much less likely that he'll be coming back, that you can never wholly count him out. And it's been done by breaking the taboo, by bringing an Arab party into the governing coalition. So momentous events, extraordinary events which will have a dramatic effect, I am sure, on the future of both the politics of Israel itself and those of the greater Middle East.
Okay, this is a pretty broad coalition. I mean, there's a lot of parties involved here. It's also a pretty razor-thin coalition. You need 61 seats in the Knesset of the 120 Knesset to get to a ruling coalition, to a government. And it's not a done deal yet. There does need to be a vote in the Knesset to make this truly a new government and to make it a government without Netanyahu. So we're not there yet.
No.
But where do you think we go from here if everything keeps on moving in this trajectory, Alexander? This new government, what does it mean for Israel and the region if we do get the Knesset to approve this government? And going on that point, it looks to me like it's a fragile government. I mean, it's like I said, it's a lot of parties, a lot of people together. And usually when you get a lot of cooks in the kitchen, well, trouble happens and one party can drop off and that's it. So how are they going to rule? How are they going to move forward in such a unpredictable and volatile region and situation right now at the moment?
Well, you've put your finger on the real point because, of course, first of all, this is, as you correctly said, a coalition with a razor-thin majority, which won't hold together, and it's made up of many parties and many completely contradictory parties. So you have ultra-nationalist, hardline Israeli parties in coalition with Arab parties. I mean, it doesn't make sense as a coalition. This coalition has only one purpose and one objective, and that is to prize Netanyahu out of the post of Prime Minister. That's all its purpose is. Once he is once he's no longer Prime Minister, and once his many political enemies in Israel come together and make sure that he's not going to become Prime Minister again, which I predict they will try to do, using the various legal cases that have been brought against him, I predict and expect this coalition to collapse. I cannot imagine it governing Israel effectively for any length of time. And at that point, when that happens, that stability and unity of purpose and direction, which Netanyahu, whatever you may think of him, I know lots of people, dislike him intensely, but he has given Israel a central stability and purpose over the time he's been Prime Minister. That unity will shatter and shatter completely. And we will have a period within Israel, it seems to me, of great instability and political volatility, perhaps less clear direction as to where Israel is going, with different forces within Israel pulling in different directions, and with Israel no longer following that single stable course that it has followed up to now. It is an indication of the strong feelings that Netanyahu causes within Israel itself, that all of these different parties are prepared to work together to that one end of getting Netanyahu removed from power, even accepting and recognizing the instability and volatility for Israel that will bring in its wake. Where that will lead to, it's very difficult to say, but I have to say that it's going to happen at a time when the Middle East itself looks increasingly unstable, as we see the United States gradually edging away from the Middle East, something we've talked about on previous programs. And I would have thought that's going to create more instability in the Middle East when one of its major powers, Israel itself, is going through what I suspect will be a long and complex period of political transition away from the Netanyahu era.
Yeah, it's interesting. Netanyahu has branded this a far-left coalition, but when you look at the parties involved, it's literally a mix of everything, right,
Absolutely.
Center, and left. I mean,
Absolutely.
it is a balanced mix of everything.
Yeah.
So anyway, he branded it far left. But what does this mean? It's so difficult to make a prediction. I was going to ask you to make a prediction. I mean, I was going to say, what does it mean for the Palestinians? What does it mean for the energy situation in the East Med? What does it mean for with Syria? I mean, there's just so many things in and around for Turkey, Saudi Arabia, even in relation with Israel and the United States. In the Biden administration, it's no secret that Biden hates Netanyahu and Netanyahu hates Biden, just as Netanyahu hated Obama and Obama hated Netanyahu. So, I mean, I don't know. I'll leave it up to you. And anything you could say about this, because it's really hard to say. I'm trying to figure out, is it better where we are right now? We just finished a very tense period in Gaza right now. Is it better to have an Israeli government without Netanyahu and to see if something good can come along for the region, some sort of peace of stability, or is it worse now that you said you have the central figure gone? I'm just trying to figure out which is better, or we're just going to have to wait and see.
Well, I'm going to start first of all with the United States, because I strongly suspect, I can't prove this, I'm speculating, but I think that it is not a coincidence that Netanyahu has gone at this precise moment in time when there is a new administration in Washington led by people who are absolutely don't like him and who want gradually, slowly, I think, to disengage from the Middle East. I think that the United States may very well, I don't know this for a fact, but may very well have had a hand in this. They might have spoken to all the various people. They may have decided that Netanyahu was an enormous problem for the new administration. Biden doesn't like him. I don't think Kamala Harris has any opinions on him, but most people, the people close to Obama, who are now very strong in the administration, they don't like Netanyahu. They wanted to see him out, and they will be pleased that he is out. And I personally think it is highly likely, I can't be sure, but I think it is highly likely that they have probably had a hand in this. That's the first thing to say. Now, what does it mean for the future? What does it mean for the Palestinians? I'm going to say what I think about this. I suspect that the next Israeli government is going to take a much harder line towards the Palestinians than even Netanyahu's government did. Because in a situation where you have a very fragile coalition, I'm going to predict that it's going to dispense with the Arab part of itself fairly quickly. We're going to see all the pieces rearranged. I think no Israeli party will want to be seen to be making concessions to the Palestinians and appearing to be soft and putting the future of the state in jeopardy whilst they're each manoeuvring for power against each other. So I suspect that they will, that you're going to see the Israeli government taking an even harder line towards the Palestinians and probably towards Hezbollah than it has been doing up to now whilst Netanyahu was there. Now, the other thing that may happen is that Iran and Israel have been in a state of undeclared war against each other. They're constantly doing all sorts of things to each other, a lot of it under the surface, some of it less so. I think that the administration hopes that getting Netanyahu, who is a notorious hardliner, or appears to be so, out of the picture will cause a dialing down of those tensions between Israel and Iran, and that will open the way for the US to complete its retreat. I think, oddly enough, it's more likely to do the opposite, and I will explain why. Because though Netanyahu has always given the impression of being a hardliner, and in many respects he is also a hardliner who is very much in control of what he does. He always knows how far to go, but he never goes so far as to provoke a general war in the Middle East. So he will launch missile strikes on Syria, but he will not launch an all-out air war on Syria. He will talk to the Russians, and he will make sure that anything he does in Syria, for example, has Russia's at least tacit acceptance, if not exactly its green light. He is a master negotiator and somebody who ultimately has a much more cautious approach to policy than he is sometimes credited for having. Who replaces him, especially if that person is weak and unlikely to be in power for very long, creates, first of all, we don't know, but it's highly likely that that person will not have either the political strength or that ability to keep control of the situation that Netanyahu has done. So I am going to make a guess that over time, at least in the medium term, we could actually see the conflict situation in the Middle East escalate and get worse with Netanyahu gone, with an Israeli government that is no longer in full control of its own actions, and with an Israeli government that may also feel that it is under growing pressure as the United States appears to be in the process of carrying out its great strategic withdrawal. So whereas I think some people in Washington may think that getting Netanyahu out is going to lead to a stabilization of the situation in the Middle East and a dialing down of tensions both with Iran and in the Palestinian territories, I think it's quite likely that they will achieve the opposite. What do we often hear? That famous word, be careful what you wish for. Many people have wished to see the back of Netanyahu. Now that he is gone, perhaps the day will soon come when they will see that they have cause to regret his passing. Yeah. I say that, I want to stress again, I'm no fan. I'm not saying it because I like the man. I'm just being objective and realistic, in analysing the situation in Israel today.
No, without a doubt. You know what we say in Greece all the time when it comes to new prime ministers and presidents. The next one is always worse.
Exactly.
The next one is always worse, unless of course you get, like a Putin or a Trump. Then you hold on to those leaders, or an Orban. You hold on to them for dear life. But anyway,
unless you're the United States, in which case, well, maybe not the United States, but at least people there. In which case you don't, and you end up with something else.
10% for the big guy. All right, all right. We'll leave it there, Alexander. Not a very good. You don't see things as turning out very good in the shorter medium term. Let's see how they play out. Yeah.
I don't. Right. As I said, I stress again. I'm not a fan of Netanyahu. If anything, I don't like the man. But as I said, I am realistic about it. I like to be realistic and objective about these things, and that's how I see them at the moment.
All right. We'll continue to monitor this. A big event, no doubt about it. All right, guys, look for us on Odyssey. Look for us on BitChute. And look for us on SuperU, the free speech video platform. By the way, Alexander, BitChute has been banned in all of Denmark. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. Well, there you go.
Yeah. Denmark is making a lot of news. A lot of news these days. Very interesting. Anyway, a whole country has banned BitChute. But guys, support BitChute and look for us there as well. And go to our locals as well and join the conversation. We're going to have some locals promotions coming up as well. Some promos for people to join our locals. And we'll roll that out. And we will be promoting a new product as well from Greece. And we'll be rolling that out soon as well. All right, take care. I got another email from the Olive